All right, class, welcome back to Advanced Algebra 2. Today is Monday, April the 27th, 2020. These are the last two verses of chapter 8 of Proverbs. For whoever finds me finds life and receives favor from the Lord, me being wisdom. But whoever fails to find me or fails to find wisdom harms himself. All who hate wisdom or all who hate me love death, meaning they're not interested in life eternal. All right, we're in section 6.4. It's titled Select and Draw Conclusions from Samples. A couple of definitions for you. One being population. It is the entire group of people or objects you're interested in studying. Then a sample of that population would be a subset of the population. And below it are described 4 different sample sets or subsets. The first one being self-select sample or volunteers. And if you think about people, we're looking at volunteers, and I'll come back with an example of each in just a moment. There is a systematic sample where a rule is used to choose the sample. There's convenience sample, and it's just an easy to reach group. And then there is random sampling, where each member actually has equal chance of being selected. So, scoot down to the end of the board. I picked on Mrs. Campbell today. So Mrs. Campbell wants to know if students would like the morning announcements posted on the school's website. She decides to survey the students in her first hour class. You're asked to identify this type of sample described. So I've got it written there in red. It is a convenience sample because they're easy to reach. She just chose to use the students in her first hour class. So again, they are convenient, easy to reach. Now, if we were to think about the other 3 types of sample subsets, first one being a self-select sample. Those are volunteers. That might be, she might step out in the hall and say, hey, anybody want to come into my room and take a survey real quick? Or she might send out a mass email and say, hey, anybody want to swing by my room second hour and give me their opinion? That would be self-select sample. That would be people that would volunteer. Systematic sample, that's when a rule is used, and I find that one interesting. She might decide to step out in the hall, and every 4th person that walks by her, she would wave them into her room and then survey them. So a rule for that choosing of sample. And then a random sample, which is actually going to be the easiest and should be the most representative of the entire population. A random sample is when maybe all the names of the student body are put into a hat, and then out of the hat are pulled maybe 25 or 35 of those student names, and then those students are actually surveyed. So it would be a random sampling from the whole body. All right, so those are the different types of samples from a population. This would be just a singular example of identifying the type of sample. All right, now another interesting definition is when is the sample biased? Okay, if it is biased, then that part of the population is either overrepresented or underrepresented. If it's unbiased, it's going to be representative. So a random sample probably should have more unbiased, if you will, than some of the other ones. So, question is, in the survey of Ms. Campbell's first hour class, is it biased or not? And I would say it is biased because it is going to underrepresent the entire school, and it would overrepresent her first period class. All right. So, scooting over a little bit. Let's say her first class has 12 students. All right. What's going to be the margin of error calculated when surveying 12 students instead of the entire student body. Okay, so that's the first question. So, what's the margin of error? All right, the margin of error is calculated as a plus or minus of 1 divided by the square root of n. And n is going to be your sample size. Okay, n is the sample size. So, in this first example, I've got 1 divided by the square root of 12 because there were 12 people in her first hour class. 1 divided by the square root of 12 is plus or minus, forgot that part, approximately 0.289 or plus or minus 28.9%, nearly a third, okay, margin of error. And that's because we chose such a small sample. Now, so what if she had 3 classes of 12 during the day that she actually chose to survey? Well, the larger sample size, the smaller amount of error or margin of error. So 3 classes of 12 would be 36. So to be plus or minus 1 divided by the square root of 36, or 0.16 repeating, or plus or minus 16.7%. So again, the larger the sample size, the smaller the margin of error. And as the elections get closer and closer to November, you will hear margin of error lots of times in polls. And so hopefully you'll find that interesting. All right, good day.